as I've said initially in my mail, I really want to, I don't want to follow a typical question answer sort of a dynamic. I just want to, have a conversation with you and just because who you are as a person, who you are as a professional, and just speak your mind on, on a variety of different topics.
All right. Sounds good.
So yeah, where are you right now? Are you on tour? Are you at home?
I'm at home, right? Yeah, getting ready to go to Europe to do about 2.5 weeks acoustic tour with my friend Brandon Gibbs. So that's coming up, and then I'm home for about a week and possibly cramming in Revolution Saints promo stuff in there, and then I go on the Trans-Siberian Orchestra tour here in the U.S. For 2 months.
Yeah, I've been noticing that you have a very heavy schedule and you are constantly involved into different projects and stuff like that. Do you enjoy, this sort of intense life of a musician and being everywhere all the time, or like are you a type of person that enjoys stays at home at some point, or what type of a person you would say you are in this area?
I don't know if it's necessarily whether or not I'm on the road or at home.
Mhm.
It's just, I think, obviously, like working hard with music is the only way to kind of be able to do it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen by just sitting around and talking about working. So I try to stay actively involved with music on a daily basis, one way or another, and then hope that things go well.
Yeah, yeah, that makes all the sense, really. I would be very happy if you can, walk me through your journey to where you are right now, career-wise. Because obviously we're all aware of your resume and it's so rich, and you've been involved with so many different high-quality projects. But I'm really interested to hear the start of your journey. What would you say your career defining moments that made you interested in being involved with music?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really long story,
Yeah.
my story. So even when I tell the shortened version, it's really long. But
Mhm.
it basically the gist of it is that everything is kind of built off of small steps, at least for
Mhm.
me. Um, Starting out, just being a kid, my parents were classical musicians, so they had me playing cello and piano at a young age, and I didn't really take to it. But I think I was 11 when I went to them and asked for a guitar because I heard AC/DC and saw
Mhm.
AC/DC on MTV and thought Angus Young was really cool and wanted to be him basically.
Mhm.
So I asked for a guitar and that kind of set me off on it. That
Mhm.
was the beginning.
Amazing. Like, and I love hearing this sort of perspectives from, successful musicians as yourself. Do you remember specific moments that made you fall in love with music? Like whether it's like a childhood memory or hearing a specific song, just that sparked this idea in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely, like I said, AC/DC,
Yeah,
back in black.
yeah,
Hearing that, and then seeing Angus Young on MTV and wanting a guitar. And at first, I needed to start on my stepmom's acoustic guitar,
mhm,
and I was taking lessons from somebody teaching me how to read the three notes on the high E string,
yeah,
etc. Of the method book. And I remember having a minute where I was like, "This isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to like learn how to play rock." And my friend had a guitar and he knew some rock songs, and I was like, "Whoa, where did you learn how to do that?" And he told me, "Oh, I take lessons with this guy over here, and he teaches rock songs." And so when I started lessons there, that was very inspiring because he taught me a lot of my favorite. Yeah, I started off very much into like basic like heavy metal stuff and the hard rock, and so learning some of those riffs, that was really what got things rolling, the enthusiasm.
Let's say, what would you say is like um, the breakthrough moments that made you believe that you would achieve that you're in the right path of achieving your goals? Did you have a moment where you were like, okay, this is happening, I'm doing what I want to do, I'm on the right path, and I'm just excited to go further?
I don't know that there was ever one moment. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I had a lot of enthusiasm for it, and it was definitely what I wanted to do. I think I more so set my goals to be a professional guitar player more so than
Mm-hmm.
like quote unquote rock star.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically just decided like guitar was the way I wanted to make my living, and getting out of school in the early going, that meant a lot of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I taught about 70 students a week through my
Oh, wow.
20s, and then would kind of like do gigs with my bands on the weekends or whatever, and take off from teaching when I needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, playing gigs, I started to do more and more of that
Mm-hmm.
and less of the teaching. And then I'd say right about the time I was 30 was when it turned into really full-time playing, like performing.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped teaching, and that pretty much lasted 20 years or so until COVID hit. And then
Oh,
when
wow.
I was kind of stuck home and all the performances were canceled, and recording was good, but not enough to be like, that's how I'm going to make my living. I brought
Mm-hmm.
back virtual teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and that's remained part of the equation for me,
Mm-hmm.
as far as what I do as a guitarist, these last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of balance out touring and writing and recording and a little bit of the virtual teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully, I had that background in it, of teaching that many students when I was younger, that I think, um, I don't know, makes me able to teach. Some people that I guess achieve some recognition with guitar, they haven't really put that hat on, so to speak, before, so they don't necessarily know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So one way or another, I just try to stay busy with guitar and with music. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, when you work, it usually leads to other work or does
Mm-hmm.
good things. So I just try to stay busy working and hope that things go well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You considering the fact that you spend, so much time in your life and so much energy into perfecting your craft and becoming the professional that you are, is it difficult for you to still find this natural instinctive excitement towards playing guitar, or is it more at this stage it's more of like a profession or like a routine for you?
I mean, I would say it's a balance of those two things.
Mhm.
There's definitely times where playing is exciting and it's something that motivates me, but also I'm pretty much active with it on a daily basis, so I'm a bit numb to it at times. There's
Mhm.
usually like professional tasks. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely um like solidly professionally oriented around
Mhm.
guitar. More so than picking it up and saying, let me just noodle, or let me just, I mean, on occasion
Mhm.
that happens, but for the most part, there's some kind of direct task that I'm doing.
Mhm. I see, I see. Um, and a specific question, by the way, that I really wanted to ask you is that, one of the first thing that made an impression in me when I saw you play for the first time was something that for me really distinguished you from most of the guitarists that I've seen play. And this is that um, you're very positive looking when you play. You have a big smile, and this is very much in contrast to what heavy metal and rock guitarists usually try to expose, you know. So I wanted to ask, like, is this like a direct representation of who you are in terms of, being a positive person and enjoying music, or is this a reaction that is not that mindful, and just happens when you play?
I'd say it's natural, um, and it also tends to fit with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for instance, the Brandon Gibbs tour coming up. I mean, we're just two guys playing acoustic guitar in smaller venues, intimate venues. So to be pretentious or to have some kind of rock star attitude on stage doesn't necessarily gel with that, or angry when you're playing
Yeah.
acoustic music. So,
Yeah.
and Trans-Siberian Orchestra is pretty much, you know, a family event and all ages show. You've got kids there, so you don't necessarily want to project anything that's too, I don't know. I mean, there's times where I have my heavy metal face on with that, but it's kind of goes between all those things. That feeling like, um, I guess that, you know, you want to be able to smile. You look out and you see kids, you're going to
Yeah.
smile and be happy. And David Coverdale pretty much embraced that as well. I mean, he likes the positivity, the fun aspect of, um, I guess, performing and being in Whitesnake. He doesn't want to be negative and scowling the entire
Yeah.
time either, but balances out aggression where you're into it and you do kind of go there a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, in general, it's just a natural thing.
I see. I see. I guess this is, you know, the best type of approach when it comes to this, just being natural. And I'm just asking because I see more and more artists nowadays just trying to portray a certain emotion just to fit in the whole product. And I think this very much takes away from the genuinity of what they're trying to do, which I guess it's not something that you want to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, everybody, I think if you work hard enough and you go after everything that kind of comes your way, that you kind of end up where you're supposed to be, with what fits most naturally with you. At least that's the way it worked with me. So yeah, eventually you kind of end up where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say is what would you say is the most difficult and I guess thought-provoking lesson that you've learned throughout your experience in the music industry?
Um, I would just say that you pretty much get back what you put into it. So, you know, putting in time and putting in effort and putting in work and working at it on a daily basis. That's kind of what you need to break it down to, is a daily thing, thinking about every day, putting something into that. That tends to be what you get rewarded with in the end.
Did you experience difficulties yourself just being consistent in your, endeavor in terms of developing career in music? Did you have times where you've been hesitant whether to go further with that, or any sort of thoughts that might have been preventing you from going further?
I would say, you know, initially no, because you're young and you're like, whatever, I've got time. If I ever want to change my mind and do something else, I always can. Probably the hardest period was my younger 20s, when a lot of my friends who went on and went to college and got their business degrees, etc., were getting jobs and buying their own places and starting families, etc. And I was just kind of this misfit guy who was like teaching lessons and playing gigs on the weekends and hadn't found a lot of success yet. So that was probably the roughest period, but I don't know. I always had some level of enthusiasm for what I was doing that kind of carried me through that time frame.
Mm-hmm. Do you um, do you think, for example, that musicians nowadays maybe lack this sort of devotion towards the craft and towards career in music, due to the overall change in the environment of the music business? So, do you in general see, what do you think are the problematics of musicians nowadays, considering the circumstances that we live in?
Well, I think it's shifted a lot. I think there's a big focus right now on, um, I guess like social media fame
Mm-hmm.
versus like gigging fame or touring fame.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the great players are the people that are spending a lot of time creating content for online.
Mm-hmm.
I still think any of that stuff is a positive. Like anything that gets people actively involved in music, you know, all the way down to the singing contest shows like American
Mm-hmm.
Idol or The Voice, etc. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, on one hand, you can bag on it and say, well, that's all about sensationalism, people hitting the
Mm-hmm.
high notes, etc., and all that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, it still does get kids actively involved, like it with music and seeing value in being a musician. So I don't necessarily look at that stuff like it's bad. And same with the online content, especially for guitar players, that tends to be really technically oriented these days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I still think it sets a bar for people to practice and try and be, I guess, a musician on a level. So I don't necessarily think of that stuff as bad. I
Mm-hmm.
do kind of miss the style of player that wasn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like technically oriented. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
I take some of the examples that would come to mind would maybe be like, you know, Angus Young, because he was
Mm-hmm.
such an amazing performer with his bluesy style, but you know, it was kind of built more off of a stage persona.
Mm-hmm.
Or players like David Gilmour or
Mm-hmm.
Alex Lifeson, guys who weren't necessarily playing anything technical, but were great guitarists.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the ground that seems to be lacking more these days,
Mm-hmm.
as most of it tends to be kind of like I said, technical, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still good. There, you know, there's some amazing players, and it's fun to see. I think as long as something is out there that inspires people to keep going in music, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be very helpful at some point in time to sort out the artist royalties on streaming,
Mm-hmm.
um, in terms of fairness for people to be able to generate a career in music. You
Mm-hmm.
know, not necessarily for myself at this stage of the game, because I've had a nice career and um, you know, and I'm doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was a kid starting out, it would be more helpful if you could write a song and actually get like a fair royalty rate on it,
Yeah.
streaming, and actually make some money that way. So that's something that could definitely stand to be fixed. Um, you know, touring, it's cool that it's still around. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing that it's still around in a way, because to go someplace in person versus stay home and watch it on your computer
Mm-hmm.
screen or whatever it's harder and harder.
Yeah.
I mean, home entertainment is phenomenal nowadays
Mm-hmm.
compared to what it used to be. Now you have access to whatever you want to do or see right at home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid growing up, that wasn't the case. You know, we were
Yeah.
all the way back to the television, manually changing the five channels on your TV. That was about it. So obviously concerts were a bigger deal to go see back then. That wasn't
Yeah.
something you had access to.
Yeah, I see. I see. Um, do you, in general, do you relate with the approach that musicians have nowadays in terms of whether it's composing, whether it's the missives that they have in their songs, whether there's approach to production, and all of that? Obviously, you sort of answered this question, but even from the perspective of not just a listener, but the professionals, do you see any points that you don't agree with, or that you find relatable to you personally? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on
I
that.
mean, I'd say technologically, a lot of that stuff is really, really great
Mhm.
and underrated. The fact that, I mean, when I was younger and I did my home recordings,
Mhm.
I was working on a 4-track with a cassette. And I
Yeah.
mean, nowadays to be able to make a professional sounding recording, even in something like GarageBand, which
Mhm.
comes as a standard, obviously, you know, application on a
Mhm.
Mac or any Apple device. I mean, it's that's great. I think that's awesome. And it gives people the ability to record better sounding music
Mhm.
right at home. I think the ability to, if you want to hire professional musicians to play on your stuff and you can file share
Mm-hmm.
and make recordings with players that, I mean, that's cool that that's something that's a reality for
Mm-hmm.
people these days. I mean, when I was a kid, if I wanted to have any famous musician play on my material, there was
Yeah.
no way to achieve that. I mean, you'd have to like fly them into your hometown or something and go into a studio. And so I think that a lot of that stuff has actually been really, really positive. It gets a bad reputation a lot of times,
Mhm.
but in general, I think the technological aspect of recording and what
Mhm.
you're able to do is great. And that does inspire people to write and
Mhm.
make music. And that stuff in general, I'm pretty positive on. It's just that the fact that people can't get paid for it, that's
Yeah.
that's difficult.
Sure. Yeah. Um, so let's just, get back again on the route of your career. Um, what would you say is like your most memorable moment that that made you feel shivers on your on your body and just made you realize that that you always associate your success with in general, a feel good moment, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those. I
Mhm.
mean, the general Reader's Digest, quick, like point by point thing would be teaching and gigging in Chicago.
Mhm.
Um, After I had gone away to LA, I went to a Guitar Institute of Technology,
Mhm.
Musicians Institute, when
Mhm.
I was 19 in Hollywood. So going there was exciting, getting out of school, teaching and gigging with my bands on the weekends, uh, starting to gig with a bigger band locally in Chicago, Kathy Richardson, who sings for Jefferson Starship and her
Wow.
band. And that led to me doing some sessions with Jim Peterick, who founded Survivor and the Ides of March,
Wow.
and being in his house band for World Stage and getting to play with a lot of my childhood idols through that. He had guest musicians that allowed me to play with Rick Emmett from Triumph, and
Wow.
Alan Parsons and Don Barnes from 38 Special. And one of the people was Kelly Kagi from Night Ranger, who was there every year. And that kind of eventually led to me getting the opportunity to audition for Night Ranger and get the gig. Simultaneously coming to New York through Kathy Richardson, she had landed a role as Janis Joplin in a theater
Mhm.
piece called Love Janis. So that was when I became a full-time performer, moving to New York, doing that, going out with other theater-related things, doing pit musicals, starting to gig in the oldie scene with the Turtles and Big Brother and the Holding Company. Um, Kind of from there, I would say it really was the story of me starting to play with Night Ranger, then getting the Broadway show Rock of Ages through doing the
Wow.
pit stuff, and then through both of those getting Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and then having David Coverdale or joining Whitesnake at that time, kind of leaving Night Ranger to join Whitesnake, and then playing with Cher during the
Wow.
time that David was having knee surgery, and that really lasted a few years.
Mhm.
And kind of in the meantime, staying busy with things like playing with Brandon Gibbs when I had spare time, and then also playing with Broadway's Rock of Ages band. Now that the show itself is closed, that band still goes out and plays the versions of the songs. And obviously, during that time, you could include recording. I did 3 solo albums that were just under Joel Hoekstra that were
Mhm.
instrumental. Then starting Joel Hoekstra's 13, which is kind of my rock project,
Mhm.
and releasing 3 albums under that. And that kind of obviously being able to do the albums with Night Ranger, Whitesnake, recording a bit with people like Jeff Scott Soto, Michael
Wow.
Sweet, and now having the other side projects on Frontiers like Iconic and
Mhm.
Revolution Saints.
Mhm.
So all this stuff, all of it's been a positive step, and it just kind of like builds. You can see how it builds bit by bit. There's never
Yeah.
one moment where you go, I've made it, but that's
Yeah.
kind of like how it built. And like I said, that's a long-winded story right there. Even when
Yeah.
I break it down to small bits like that, I could get much more detailed, and it takes forever.
Yeah. Um, just hearing, everything that you've just mentioned and keeping in mind the intensity of your work that we talked about in the beginning of a conversation, I'm wondering, is there a time where, you know, you whether your creativity is at a low point and you're just sort of sick of music and struggling to move forward creatively. I'm just interested to get the perspective of a person like you who, I just can imagine that there is a time where all of your potential and your capacity is just being exhausted, but you still need to obviously move forward. How do you deal with such moments if there are some?
The creativity has always been something that's come really naturally to me. So I feel like I'm able to be creative, like, on demand with
Mm-hmm.
music. So more of the struggle is to actually create like a successful career with it that allows you to be creative and allows you to like be able to do that for your life. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of times where I'm playing guitar where I don't want to be playing guitar.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the nature of being a professional with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also part of why it's good for you to be a professional with it, because it keeps you on it regardless.
Yeah.
So, you're going to get better whether or not you want to get better,
Yeah.
because you're kind of forced to do so. So, that's just the reality, I think, of being a professional. There's plenty of times where you don't feel like playing, but you have to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's a lot of people get into music because they think they're going to avoid work. What they need to
Mm-hmm.
realize is they're probably going to have to work much harder at
Yeah.
music to actually make a living at it than any other job they would go into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this seems to be, this seems to be an idea that many people that are just starting in the business neglect. That most of the times, as you said, this is way harder than a typical career, I guess.
I mean, everybody's got their own path to walk down. Sometimes people find success really early on. I have a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
people that I work with from the 80s that found success at a really early age. I was just the guy who kind of it just built gradually for, and I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of that was just my path. It doesn't mean it's the same for everybody else, but that's the way it's worked for me, and it's been kind of a very logical one, just to kind
Mm-hmm.
of like keep working a guitar, keep trying to do everything, stay open minded, still be an artist, still create. I haven't shut that door to like making my own music, and
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely tried to keep that alive. I know that that's really important. That's at the same time, I do enjoy like just being a professional guitar player and
Mm-hmm.
playing other gigs, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to get out there, especially on a high level. Some of the gigs that I've been able to do are really amazing gigs. Playing with
Mm-hmm.
Whitesnake and Trans-Siberian Orchestra and Cher, and I mean those are great experiences that a guitar player would be lucky to have one of those. So to have
Mm-hmm.
several is really been a blessing for sure.
I think this is a very good, lesson why you need to be consistent and persistent with everything that you're doing, rather than, just hop on from one opportunity to another. How do you spend your time, and what do you do outside of music where you want to unwind and, when you want to have your creative juices flowing again? Is there a specific activity that recharges you or anything like that?
Just very like normal stuff. Like
Mhm.
I'm into sports, following sports, and even
Mhm.
playing a little bit of basketball and periodically, and not necessarily lately for me, but following basketball and baseball in
Mhm.
particular are kind of the two sports that I follow, or watching movies, or just watching something where my brain can just kind of shut down and
Yeah.
relax. So it's not often music related. Once I've spent the day with music, it's kind of like something just
Mhm.
to get away from it.
Which NBA team are you supporting?
The Bulls, because
The
I grew
Bulls?
up in the Chicago area, so yeah, I grew up a Chicago Bulls fan. You kind of had to in that era.
Yeah.
That was,
Are
we
you
had
ex
my we had Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and
The big
Horace
boys.
Grant and Dennis Rodman, etc. So some great players.
I want to ask you, what's your opinion on the GOAT debate then? I think it's clear. uh,
Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily a believer that it's that clear cut. I think it's kind
okay.
of a ridiculous argument.
Yeah.
Just everybody can have their favorite player and their favorite things
Mhm.
that they think are important. Um, but obviously, I'm a big Michael Jordan fan growing
Mhm.
up in that era because I did get to witness kind of firsthand somebody coming in who was just their draft pick. There wasn't a
Wow.
lot of hype. It was just there's this new Bulls player supposed to be pretty good, and then
Mhm.
watching it all unfold was really fun. So it wasn't the same kind of hype that happens for young players these days.
Yeah.
There was some hype, but not a lot. I mean, it was just kind of like, and then word kind of spread. And so, that for me, he's my favorite player because of, being able to watch those accomplishments. And that was the team that I rooted for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that doesn't, I think it's important to remember that basketball is a team sport. Like they
Hmm.
play different positions.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not supposed to be the same player. People are asked to do different things on different teams. The game changes. The game has changed immensely from when Michael Jordan was playing to nowadays. If we're citing LeBron James or whatever,
Yeah.
but everybody we're talking about is an amazing basketball player.
Mm.
So, you
Yeah.
know, I think it's important to respect the people from all the eras that did well in their eras.
Very well said. What are your expectations? Are Bulls getting out of the East this year?
I don't I know. I think it's a bad situation. They're kind of forced to run it back with the same players,
Hmm.
and Lonzo Ball is out again for the whole year.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. I mean, at some point in time, I'm sure it's the type of year where they're going to look to make some trade moves based
Hmm.
upon who they have on the team. Otherwise, pretty similar to last year, maybe making the last playoff spot or something, but not a championship team.
Well, finally, what's your pick to win it all this year? I'm very curious to hear that too.
What with basketball?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, well, I think that we could probably, gosh, I mean that's a tough one. I mean the Nuggets are going to be really good again. I would say the Bucks. It'll be
Got
interesting to
Damian
see
Lillard.
how. Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that fits in.
Hmm.
How that goes, and then a lot of the NBA comes down to injury. So
True.
it's
True.
like everything can change in the blink of an eye. If Giannis goes down for the year, well, that's the end of that. They're not doing
Yeah. True.
it.
True.
So, but Milwaukee's going to have a really great team. I could see them doing it, or the Celtics could
Hmm.
potentially do it. I'm trying to think off the top of my head too. Phoenix could maybe
Yeah.
stand a chance. But Denver, they're a lot better, I think, than people give them credit for. They're
True.
just it's because Jokic is not his game isn't like beautiful to watch, but
Yeah.
he's the results are there.
True. And seems so many people neglected him just because he doesn't look very athletic and stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah. It's not as fun as it's not as beautiful to watch as some of the more athletic players, but he's definitely an amazing player.
true, true. Well, definitely lots of interesting teams this year, so it will be very interesting.
It's more exciting than the years where we knew Golden State was going to win it.
Oh yes,
That was kind
this
of
was terrible, to be fair.
it's like, why even play the year? Just
Yeah.
go ahead and give him the trophy.
Although, I mean, Golden State seems to me that might be sneaking up again because they're quietly, having a good team, and obviously CP went there, and
I don't see how he fits in there, to be honest. I don't really see how he fits in on that team. I know he's a smart player, shoots a high field goal
mm,
percentage, but I mean, you've already got Steph and Clay at the guard
yeah,
position,
true.
so so I guess he's Steph's backup point guard. I mean,
I don't
Uh,
know how he will take that, to be
he's
fair.
he's also, I mean, he's still great, but he's getting older. So,
Yeah.
injuries are always a part of that. Injuries are, I'd be concerned about Steph eventually here too, the
Mm.
ankles and everything. He's getting older. And um, so I'd be surprised if Golden State won it. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, to be fair, the West seems quite weak these days because I still don't know what's happening with Kawhi and Paul George. I don't know like if
Yeah.
Kawhi is playing this year. Lakers obviously a big, very questionable situation again. So I guess Denver is the team to beat over there, but
Denver is, they deserve more respect than they're getting. I mean, they won
true,
it, and they won it finally. I think having Jamal Murray back was the missing piece. They needed him back in there. And they have great chemistry. They play well
true,
together as a team. So I think they deserve more credit than they're getting. I mean, they're the champions. So
true.
that's the way it goes sometimes when you win your first one. Sometimes people think you're lucky, but if they come back and win it again this year,
Again,
that's when people
yeah,
start to respect them and go, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't
yeah.
a fluke.
Yeah, but they're such a good, as you said, team. Probably this is what helped them so much because they were one of the few teams that actually were playing team basketball rather
Yeah.
than just having a nicer ball in the clutch in the playoffs all the time.
Yeah, better chemistry. A lot of the teams, they've got the great players, but it's how they gel, and that's it'll be interesting to see with Milwaukee how Damian Lillard gels in there with Giannis. And I mean, it might be Giannis is the type of player that doesn't need the ball to
Yeah,
have a huge impact on the game. He's such a athletic player and huge. I mean, just
it
it's
it
it's
it
pretty incredible.
yeah, it makes sense to us because Giannis was never like the closer type of guy, I feel like. And Damian seems to be. And I guess with the combination with Chris Middleton and all that, it would be
Yeah.
it's an exciting combo, I
It's
guess.
it seems like it could work on
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 paper,
for
yeah.
on paper it seems like
Uh,
it could work, but you never know until you see it. And
yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Then again, the Nets had to work again, but obviously just didn't happen. So
The Nets just never got those guys on the floor at the same time, and there was just a lot of, I think, again, the chemistry issues there.
yeah.
Just in terms of how they were going to handle it. They probably would have won one if it wasn't for injuries. That team was clearly the best team for a period in
Probably,
time
yeah.
with those three guys, but they just, they weren't able to all get healthy. I suppose Philadelphia's got a chance too. I don't know. I question the ability for Embiid and Harden to stay
Mm,
healthy and stuff,
yeah.
though. Yeah.
Harden again seems very out of shape. And I mean, last year was a big decline, I guess, but it's
Yeah,
still
I
good.
mean, he's still a great player in his own weird way. He's definitely a one of a kind, unique player.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's a possibility. The Philadelphia could be in there for sure.
Still definitely better than Ben Simmons, I guess. So
Yeah, it's a shame. That's a shame, actually.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't hold you much longer. I can talk about NBA all day long, so I will just stop here. But yeah, thank you so much again for taking the time. It was massive pleasure. Very much appreciate accepting the invitation. So yeah, thank you so much, and I strongly hope I'll see you on the road sometime soon.
Okay, buddy. Thank you
Okay.
so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice
Okay.
day. See ya.
You too.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.